up, Taiwan? I'm Reece Ayers with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. We begin today in South Korea, where a vote to impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol has failed. His own party has said Yoon will step down in good time, but the public and opposition may be hungry for harsher punishments as arrests related to his decision to call martial law begin. Calls to impeach South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol continue, even after an initial attempt failed, when ruling party lawmakers boycotted the vote, simply leaving the building. Leaving a crowd of frustrated protesters accusing politicians of abetting a man who tried to put his country under martial law. Opposition leaders are also saying the ruling People Power Party is ignoring the public and acting undemocratically.
국민의힘은 민주정당이 아닙니다. 국민의힘은 내란 정당, 군사 반란 정당입니다.
Politicians say they'll keep trying to impeach, though another vote may not be necessary, as on Saturday night the ruling party announced they had agreed to oust their own president themselves eventually.
국민의힘은 혼란을 최소화하기 위해서 대통령의 질서 있는 퇴진을 추진할 것입니다. 이미 대통령은 자신의 임기에 대한 당의 결정을 따르겠다고 한 바 있으니 혼란은 없을 것입니다.
And on Sunday morning, after resigning just days earlier, ex-Defence Minister Kim Yong-hyun is now under arrest and under investigation for insurrection, for reportedly proposing Yoon declare martial law. Tens of thousands of South Koreans have been, for the most part peacefully, calling for the removal of President Yoon since December 3rd, when he unexpectedly declared martial law. Yoon claimed he was acting to protect the country from North Korean agents, but quickly rescinded his decision hours later, after a unanimous vote from lawmakers to block him. Many in Seoul say they'll continue fighting for their hard-earned democracy.
지금 현재 대통령이 내려와야 되지 않을까요? 지금 현재 상태로서는.
이번에 윤석열 대통령을 믿고 딱 따라갔을 때 자유민주주의를 지켜내기 위해서라도 민주당은 어떻게든 이제 무너질 거라고 생각합니다. 저는 자유민주주의가 끝까지 지켜질 거라고 생각합니다.
For now, Yoon is set to remain in position, but with continuing calls for impeachment and his own party promising his departure, Yoon's days as president look to be numbered. Howard Jung and Reece Ayers for TaiwanPlus. The number of Chinese naval ships operating around Taiwan has doubled over a 24-hour period. Taiwan's Defense Ministry on Sunday morning has said that it had detected 14 Chinese naval vessels near Taiwan, up from 8 the day before. China is expected to launch military drills around Taiwan in the coming days in response to Taiwan President Lai Ching-te's recent tour of diplomatic allies. China claims Taiwan as its own and says Lai's transits through 2 US territories undermined China's sovereignty. As you heard, the military here is on alert for potential large-scale military drills from China. For more on why Beijing might be stepping up threats toward Taiwan, Jaime Okan spoke to Lauren Dickey, a security analyst with the China Power Project in Washington, D.C.
Lauren, I want to ask you about China using these overseas trips by Lai Ching-te and the statements that President Lai Ching-te makes as an excuse to conduct military exercises. Is this a new normal?
So I think anytime that President Lai goes overseas or makes statements that somehow suggest that Taiwan is a sovereign or independent entity and that the option of unification is not on the table, China has to react to that. For them, Taiwan and that goal of reunification is such a political crown jewel that they can't let this go by without doing something. And so the Joint Sword exercise series, because we don't know how many letters are in the alphabet for them to execute, right? Like they could use a joint sword in response to any type of engagement or speech or travel as they deem appropriate. So my hope is that because I think from the road, President Lai has shown a pretty pragmatic and even-handed approach from what I've seen. So hopefully any military response by China would also take into account the fact that, there haven't been any splashy statements about Taiwan's identity that he's made. And hopefully China will be savvy enough to calibrate in that context.
With China having conducted Joint Sword A, Joint Sword B, and now potentially a Joint Sword C, is there a concern that maybe the United States and Taiwan could maybe be complacent that these drills are becoming kind of an ordinary kind of occurrence?
I do worry about that. I think that, if you look at the history of air and maritime entry events into Taiwan's ADIZ as sort of our historical marker, when those started at a larger scale and frequency than what we had seen, it was a big shock, I think, to the United States. And the United States responded, right? There were statements, there were cautionary words put out into the public. But with time, my view is that some of that tapered off. And the U.S. in some ways effectively helped normalize those actions China was taking toward Taiwan. And so now I think with the Joint Sword exercises continuing, indefinitely, we're confronted with the same challenge, right? Do we want to push back every time they happen? And if so, how hard should the United States push back? Or do we, run the risk of normalizing them by not doing anything? And I think that would be particularly dangerous. So it will be important and interesting to watch, in the coming days, how the U.S. and potentially allies and partners around the world also respond.
That was Lauren Dickey from the China Power Project. Taiwan is warning internet influencers who spread propaganda for China could face legal repercussions. Several Taiwanese influencers have come forward saying they'd been approached by China with requests to spread harmful content and even start a new pro-China political party. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council says content creators who accept funding from Beijing pose a national security risk. According to Taiwanese law, cooperation with the Chinese Communist Party is illegal without government approval. People have shown up in droves on the final day of a multi-day march that saw activists traverse the country. A civil defense organization held the demonstration to rally Taiwanese people against Chinese aggression. Leslie Liao was there.
Activists have gathered here at this park in central Taipei on the final leg of a multi-day march to promote Taiwan's civil defense. Over the past 9 days, 50 activist groups joined in on a 380-kilometer march across the country, starting in Kaohsiung in the south, traveling through 13 cities and counties before ending up here in Taipei. Kuma Academy, an NGO dedicated to educating the public on civil defense here, organized this march. It held the movement to protest China's sovereignty claims over Taiwan. People here are holding signs urging people to defend Taiwan and stand up for the country. This demonstration comes at a time when China is expected to launch large-scale military exercises around Taiwan in response to a recent trip by President Lai Ching-te to Pacific allies. Kuma Academy co-founder and legislator Puma Shen is here with this message.
对我们来讲，今天能够站出来，我们只是对国际发声的第一步。我们的公众的外交，我们对其他国民的说服，现在变得至关重要。我们每一个人在网络上的一句话，我们的留言都会成为一股我们针对这一个议题发声的力量。
Over 1,000 people are here at Sunday's event with other politicians and public figures in tow. United Microelectronics founder and business tycoon Robert Cao, who was recently sanctioned by China for alleged pro-Taiwan independence activities, is also here, saying Taiwanese people need to stand up for their country's sovereignty.
1948年，联合国公布了人权宣言，里面就说主权在民，台湾的主权就在台湾人民的手里。 中国人的主权在中国人手里，这是天经地义的。
The theme of the final rally is Defend Taiwan. This demonstration hopes to send the message that Taiwan will not stand idly by in the face of Chinese aggression. Scott Huang and Leslie Liao in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Legislators from across party lines are demanding more be done to tackle workplace bullying in government offices. The calls come after reports emerged from the cabinet accusing a department head of verbal abuse and some staff saying they were forced to work overtime without pay. When questioned, Premier Zhou Rongtai said the problem will be dealt with, but politicians say the issue requires more than a verbal commitment.
行政院难道不能够痛定思痛，赶快去设立一个真正有效解决的 SOP 的机制？否则的话，根本不是真正的要解决现在公家机关的霸凌事件。
The outcry follows a spate of recent bullying cases that have come to light after a Labour Ministry employee's suicide due to workplace abuse. Taiwan's largest Catholic event has kicked off in southern Taiwan. The Madonna Procession is held every year on December 8th. It marks the anniversary of the establishment of Pingdong County's Wanjin Village Church. It also coincides with a Catholic holiday celebrating the church's patron saint, the Virgin Mary. This year, thousands of Catholics have showed up to express their devotion and share messages of hope and faith. A Tainan temple is protesting its listing as one of the city's historic buildings. The management argues that it would be better to rebuild from scratch due to heavy damage. As John Van Trieste reports, it's a battle between cultural preservation and concerns for visitor safety.
The Xiajiadong Qingzhong Temple has stood in its present form since 1967. Its rich woodwork carved by famed craftsman Xu Hanchen, a man who at nearly 100 years old is on the Culture Ministry's list of Taiwan's national living treasures. And it's this fine work that landed the temple on the southern city of Tainan's list of historic buildings. For many institutions, this would be an honor, but some worshippers find it a nuisance as the aging building falls apart. Decorative tiles fall from the roof, the eaves have warped, wooden columns show signs of water damage, and earthquakes have left hairline cracks in the floor. The temple worries about visitor safety and would rather rebuild from scratch, as many temples do every so often. A report by a civil engineers union backs the idea of tearing down and rebuilding. But the city has promised financial help, even pledging to get funds from the central government if needed.
当代一个相当技艺不错的一个艺师们的一个作品的汇聚的地方，屋面坍陷的部分，那这部分我们文资处会辅导来庙方来做紧急的一个加固的一个处理。那对于整体的安全的一些问题，那我们这边也会辅导庙方来做一个结构的一个安全的一个出品的一个工作。那大家希望能够一起来共同来保有我们后壁这项的一个文化资产。
But that's not what the temple management wants to hear. It's seeking an administrative remedy and may even launch a protest campaign to get permission to demolish and rebuild, the path it believes is best for its community of worshippers. Luffy Li and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today, check out the Christmas markets in Prague's Old Town Square. I'm Reece. Take care and see you next time.